Yeah, sure, I can.
Awesome.
We're ready to start. 3 minutes.
Let's do it.
Yeah,
So
let's throw a couple other things on the agenda.
So what I was going to say is we're chatting about stack packs today.
Yeah, I think so. Put it at the end though. Okay, we started the recording. Everybody make sure they've signed into the doc. Are there any new faces? I don't have gallery view on. Anybody who'd like to introduce themselves who may not be a regular to the meeting or new to the meeting?
Hi, my name's Sam. I'm a product designer from VMware who's been working on Buildpacks stuff and various things related to CMBs. I'm joining today to share some information about some user research for the project that I'd like to do. So excited to talk about it a little bit more, get on the schedule.
I have put you on the schedule.
Welcome. Doesn't look like there's anybody else. Release planning.
Sorry, there's not much yet from the platform side of things. We have PAC 016.0 scheduled for December 23rd, I believe. We might push that forward or back, depending on where the status is of the PAC repo at the time or closer to that time. So we'll keep you all posted.
On lifecycle side, the next release is going to be 0.10.0, which implements the 0.5 platform and 0.5 Buildpack specs, and targeting the end of next week, approximately.
Cool. I got a new computer, so I have to do a bunch of things before I can share. I have to quit and come back to share. I'll be right back.
I assume we're really impressing you, Sam, with how we're such a well-oiled machine.
Hi, everybody. Well, welcome to the meeting. I'll share the outstanding PRs, RC PRs, that is. This is not the RFC repo.
Those are the spec ones.
I was like, oh, this is great. We only have 3.
It's too
All
good
right.
to be true.
This is a very well-oiled meeting.
Okay, the first one, this is on the agenda, right, Travis? The search API?
Yeah, I added it.
Okay. Create Stackify repo.
Yeah, we're still kind of discussing this, so I'm not ready to go talk more about it yet.
Okay. Add image manifest size to report, Tommel.
Yeah, I'm just here to see if there's anything that needs to be done for this one.
Okay, looks, is it ready for votes? Looks like it is.
I think so.
Right. It looks like me, Terrence, and Stephen are outstanding. So yeah, unless there's anything to discuss. Oh yeah, it looks like I had some comments that got resolved. So yeah, unless there's anything that needs to be discussed, I think that's just ready to vote on.
Yeah, and Danny, I have been assigned as the Sherpa for that particular issue as well. So I'll help you with that, making sure that it gets kept up to date.
Thanks.
Cool. Add stack space image label.
I put that on the agenda for today.
Cool. Mixins is waiting. Stack Buildpacks we'll talk about at the end of the meeting. RC for project descriptor flexibility. I think we had this on hold. Oh, it's on draft. Okay. Layer origin metadata. I think Paul might have moved on. Is that right?
Yeah, he did. And there was an update from someone else that said that they were going to take a look at this and update it. I haven't seen any commits, and they haven't reached out to me since mentioning that they were going to take over. So maybe I'll ping that person this week and see if they're going to back from, holiday or something.
Okay, cool.
Offline. Joe, before we move on from this, so the Buildpack Registry Search API, when we do the review, we can make sure that we assign it to a team, but the application mix-ins and layer origin metadata haven't been assigned to a team, therefore they don't have a Sherpa yet. Can we do that before we leave?
Yeah, this one is definitely platform.
Okay, so you should be able to just set platform in there. And nope. A label. Come on, baby, work.
Search API is distribution, right? I can label that right now.
Is it the yellow one here, or is it spec platform?
Just a capitalized name.
Okay.
Capital name. I've used 7 different mute buttons.
Oh no, it's layer origin metadata, right? This is implementation, maybe?
Yeah, I'd call it implementation probably.
Okay. Offline build packages RFC.
I don't see Dan on here. Am I mistaken? Yeah, he's not here. I'll ping him and see what's left here.
I think
Yeah,
it's just
so
ready for votes, right?
Yeah, Joe is the Sherpa on this one, which we're free to change if we want to have someone else do it. But I think it's just ready for votes.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I voted on it, so. Yeah, I didn't realize I was a Sherpa, but I'll make sure that gets some votes because I think that's what's next.
And in case you missed it, Stephen, you are Sherpa for layer origin metadata.
Sounds good. I'll try to figure out who said they'd follow up there.
All right, cool. So that's it for outstanding RFCs. We have an announcement. I'll hand it over to Javier for that.
I think Ben was going to do the honors.
Okay, I'll hand it over to Ben for that.
I will do the honors. On behalf of the core team, I'm happy to announce that we have elevated one of the platform contributors to platform maintainer. Congratulations, David, the newest platform maintainer.
Thank you very much.
You should be getting a whole bunch of new permissions and other things going on right now, but I'm sure we'll miss some stuff. And Javier and Joe will reach out to you to get some more information.
Well deserved.
By new privileges, Ben means new work.
You can now
It's a
delete
privilege
all the
to
code
work.
out of the pack repository. Congratulations.
Which I probably shouldn't.
Cool. All right, well, next item is the stack space image label RFC. Somebody wanna?
Yeah, I think I'm actually going to take that off the agenda. Sorry about that. I was reading through some of the comments and I think there's some things we still need to respond to before we can talk about it more. Sorry about that.
No problem. User research for CMB. Ben, is that you?
It is me kicking it over to Sam.
Yeah. Let me just pull up this doc 1 second. Um, cool. So for those of you who don't know me, my name's Sam. I'm a product designer and user researcher at VMware, formerly Pivotal, been focused on engineering tools. I've been working on Buildpacks for about 2.5 years now, originally focused on .NET Framework, and then worked with Ben on Azure Spring Cloud, and now working with Steven on Tanzu Build Service, KPack, and Paketo. My role has been to help engineering teams make more confident decisions about the roadmap and to make sure they're building the most valuable features and implementing them in ways that will make sense to developers and satisfy their goals. Joining working group today to offer to help you all in terms of accessing users and potential users in order to get feedback on various aspects of Buildpacks v3. I've asked for and received a budget from VMware that they're going to donate to the project to recruit and compensate developers who can give feedback on CMBs and other container creation tools like Docker. The budget's for about like 15 to 20 one-hour interviews. And so we'll be able to offer compensation to those folks. So we'll give them like a $150 gift card or something. And right now I have like a working plan for who we want to talk to and what topics are important to learn from them about. But the goal of this initiative is to serve you all and your strategic needs. And I've obviously talked to a lot of the VMware folks already about what they think is important for the project. But I want to make sure this is really serving everybody in the community. So I want to learn from you all about what you think is most important to take this project to the next level. So to that end, tomorrow I'm going to use part of the time during working group to do a brainstorming exercise around some of the key assumptions we want to test and some of the key questions we want to answer. So I hope that everyone who's interested can make it. And I've been working on like a research plan document, which I'll submit as an RFC so that folks can comment and make edits and everything. And so that we can sort of keep the whole process as collaborative as possible out in the open. So that's just an intro to why I'm joining and what I'll be doing with the project over the next couple months. Sort of hoping to wrap this up in time for Buildpack Summit in the spring so that it can help bring some data to those conversations. And then I just wanted to open it up for questions if anybody is curious to know more about this.
Yeah, this is awesome. I'm really excited about this. I'm curious what channels you're going to use to like recruit people. If you want to do, I was going to say like if you want to reach out through our social media accounts or email or anything like that, let me know. Can help with that.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So the wonderful part about the budget is that we are paying some people to do this who do this kind of busy work professionally, and they like scour LinkedIn and like put out like requests on Twitter, and they also like have a database of like engineers and DevOps folks that they've recruited from in the past. So that's partly what we're paying them to do. But I think for some of the things like in discussions with them, they don't really feel confident to be able to recruit like Buildpack users or Buildpack authors. They'd certainly be fine like recruiting like potential users in the demographics that we want to see, like Dockerfile users, for example, or something like that. But in terms of like, if we want to really dig into people who've actually built Buildpacks with the v3 spec or folks who have converted over to using Buildpacks v3, those channels would be super helpful. So I'll definitely reach out more. I think the next step sort of from as I see it is to write the screener for recruitment and like what are the key like what would be a qualified candidate for us to interview. And that's a process I want to work closely with you all on. And then based on that, we can decide what channels we might need to add.
Well, yeah, I think the timing is perfect with roadmap for next year discussions coming up. And then like you mentioned, summit, whatever that will end up being next year.
Yeah, exactly. Any other questions folks have? Obviously we can talk more tomorrow. I was hoping to get like a 30-minute slot in tomorrow's working group. Cool. All right. Thanks so much. Looking forward to working together.
Thanks, Sam.
Thanks, Sam. All right, next up is Registry Api Rfc. Travis, you want to present that one?
Yeah, sure. There's a few comments that I still need to address, but I am more than happy to talk about it with the broader group if that's still acceptable. So go ahead and present. I assume everybody can see my screen okay. If not, please let me know. So yeah, I put together an RFC for the Buildpack registry, specifically a search API. And just some quick background. We've introduced a Buildpack registry right now. We have a lot of Buildpack metadata that's starting to populate this. And a couple of weeks, or actually it's been a while now, but I did a quick demo on just adding more support for our customers to have access and the ability to discover these different Buildpacks. And as a result of that, I was thinking more about what would a service look like, an API service specifically, that would allow the capability for a user or any client for that matter to perform searches against this growing vastness of Buildpacks inside of our registry. And that's the main motivation of this right now. So currently, as I mentioned, there's really no ability to easily search this unless you go directly into the Git repo and do manual traversal of the actual file system, which is very cumbersome. And as we want to increase adoption and just reduce that friction to all the different vendors out there, you know, we have Google, we have Heroku, Pacato, and XYZ, whatever, anyone that wants to publish and expose Buildpacks to be consumed by the broader community, it's really hard to find this stuff. And so my goal really is to, because we're still trying to figure out a lot about how the customer may interact with this, what the expectations might be. And my first step forward is creating an MVP of a couple of endpoints, just some basic Git endpoints, which are outlined here. So you can see these three, which is one is to retrieve all the Buildpacks in the registry. So just a simple endpoint to gather all these Buildpacks in a normalized fashion, because right now we have a different schema, kind of a method for indexing all of these Buildpacks into the GitHub repo, which is based on, if you just go and look at it, it's not very straightforward, but this will allow to normalize it and just make it more readable and user-friendly. In addition to that, I was thinking one endpoint would be to also take the existing normalized JSON payload of all these Buildpack metadatas and allow the user to perform query searches against it using just plain text strings, which is outlined here in this example. And then in addition to that, maybe a user wants to drill in more specifically into a specific Buildpack, which is what this third and last endpoint would offer. Now, I have to admit, some of this data here has been embellished. I was trying to think a little long term on what this might look like, because it's pretty limiting what is being provided right now as it stands in the actual repo. And I think down the road, it would make more sense to somehow augment this to more valuable information, such as like download metrics, any issues that might be associated with the Buildpack, just things like that, and maybe even description. There's still going to be some investigative work that needs to be done to just see what is available with these different registry vendors, like GCR, ECR, GitHub. So it's not exactly clear how this additional data might even be calculated. but I just envision down the road, it would be really beneficial to provide more than what's currently being offered in the existing Buildpack registry.
Yeah, and the registry itself doesn't actually need to gain any more information, right? The search can actually maintain an index of all of this. One of the things that we've started working on is the metadata for the images themselves actually contains a bunch of information already, basically everything in the Buildpacks block, I think. And so, so that's like ID, name, version, homepage, and that's about it. But we should endeavor to say, okay, anything that we want the index to be able to return should actually move up. Should there be a description up there? Should there be a license as a first class construct? When we start attaching assets to it, for example, that stuff should absolutely be added to that external metadata. Because what I want is the index to basically stay the way it is with a series of pointers, and for both this search thing or any other tool to be able to get all of the metadata you might be interested in without actually downloading or cracking open the build pack as we have to do today.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I don't want to have to mess with the metadata and change it as it stands. It would just be nice to have the ability to further extract those details by other means. Yeah. So currently, how it works is right now I'm basically looking at the existing repo that has all the metadata in there. And if for those of you who haven't seen it, this is the repo that I'm referring to. So in here, we have indexed in a very non-normalized fashion all of the build packs in the registry from different people, different vendors. You can see we have a lot of Mikado ones, we have some Riff ones. Joe has a Minecraft one in here somewhere. And it's not normalized. So what I'm currently doing and what I'm currently proposing is just trying to leverage as much of what we currently have. In this case, taking the existing repo that I just showed you and normalizing it, pulling it down. So the current solution I have is to have a separate thread that periodically will pull the repo, normalize all of these build pack metadatas into one single JSON object, which then will become indexed. And I'm using a third-party library right now to simply specify which keys on these JSON objects that I want to be indexed in searchable fields. And those are the fields that are compared against the query string. So as that query comes into the request with, node, for example, a user wants to search for node build packs. Well, that node query field will be compared against all these index searchable fields. And if anything matches, that build pack will be flagged as a possible candidate and added to the result, and then displayed up to the user as a request response. So as I mentioned, there's two components as it currently stands. One is to pull data from the GitHub registry to normalize it and re-index it, because outside of that, new build packs are being uploaded and merged into the repo. So it has right now just some predefined polling interval that will constantly grab that, re-update it. And then we have the three endpoints that I mentioned earlier, the three get endpoints, one to retrieve all of the build packs that are currently in there, build packs that match a specific query string value. And then one that hasn't been implemented yet is then the ability to drill down specifically into a particular build pack to get more detailed information on that build pack. Also just worth mentioning that it's kind of unknown territory right now, because this is the first time as a community we're looking at potentially supporting a service, and what does that look like? What does the burden look like? I mentioned here that the distribution team, maintainers, will be responsible for this. So that's a burden that we are looking at in all seriousness of taking on ourselves, and we're aware of it. Are there any questions or anything at this point?
So I don't know if it's a question, maybe more a comment.
Yeah.
So it seems like this RFC is maybe twofold, right? It's talking about a search API, what the parameters and what the output or results are. But then I think one of the things that it doesn't detail maybe too much in depth is that this is a new server, right? Like a new service. And so where it's going to be hosted, where its source code is going to live, and all that stuff, I feel like I didn't get any of that from this. So maybe that's worth adding more detail around as well.
Yeah, I'm happy to add some details there. My initial thought was potentially Heroku. We could just we could host this on our service. I need to verify some of that stuff, but I'll be happy to add more details around that. The code itself is in my personal repo, but I plan on just donating it to the CMB community project. So that's where I expect it'll live. Yeah.
Another repo under the Buildpacks umbrella.
Exactly.
With the distribution team managing it.
Yep, precisely. Yep.
Yeah. And Javier, like I sort of take a slightly different view on this. The things that you're primarily concerned about, like I think it's important to spell out that this is a service that we are going to keep alive, but it's kind of up to the distribution team, in my opinion, like where it's hosted, right? I don't think it's, you know, a core team responsibility to know those things. I think it's important that we define like, here's what the actual domain is going to be. And it's going to be something.buildpacks.io, right? Registry.buildpacks.io or something like that, to make sure that it is portable. And we want to sort of note, like if it runs on Heroku or if it runs on DigitalOcean or it runs on, you know, name your other place, whatever works well for the distribution team to give us a reliable, effective registry search engine. Or API, I should say.
So kind of that could just be an implementation detail then, is that what I'm hearing basically?
Yeah, I mean, don't go insane, but like this is the kind of thing that I feel like we have sub teams to manage this so that it's not, you know, a concern of every single person on the leadership teams.
Yeah, I think what's important about this RFC is the API, like the external interface, because that's the thing that goes beyond the team, right? So I want to make sure we wouldn't scope creep it into all the operational parts of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess that's why it's the note. And I guess maybe that's what threw me off, right? It's that there's a small note that says that this is a service and that this thing's going to live somewhere, but it doesn't go into detail about that. So yeah, I could totally agree with that. Everything you all said.
I was curious if we considered sort of the more client-side version of this that doesn't have a service, right? Like if we augmented the registry with a little bit more of the metadata someone might want to search, which could be useful anyways. And then since Pack already has a copy of a registry, you could basically do its own search for you without needing an extra server component. What I think one of the advantages of that is right now Pack allows users to like add additional registries from different locations, and it would kind of just work across all the registries without anyone needing to stand up their own version of the search API.
So I think we should do that in Pack.
Absolutely. Yeah,
however, I don't think that's going to solve or address the biggest problem we're trying to solve, which is discoverability and growth of the ecosystem. Like searching from the CLI functions, but it's not going to be a pleasant experience. And it's almost like having this API and the web page that goes with it is part of this is marketing, right? So that's why I think like from a like operational perspective, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. I would prefer that, but I don't think it'll actually get us where we're trying to go.
Pushing it out to platforms though, like as convenient as that is, like it's got problems, right? Like, do you think that all searching has to be done with Pack? Do you think that KPack has to implement a search function and Heroku would have to implement a search function? Like, I don't think we can actually distribute it completely.
Yeah, I imagine if you're going to distribute it that way, it would be essentially a library that Pack could consume, but another thing could, which then of course you're limiting yourself to Go. But I guess the reason I was thinking that is because the data already exists in the index, the data you would want. So like if we didn't have a way to serve this data to someone, then it would, or like a way for people to consume it. We're not serving it, people are Git pulling it. That would make more sense to me, that we definitely need this so people could write their own integrations. But because we already have a way of providing this data, like could we just use that as the distribution for this? And then if the way we've organized this data makes it hard to do the kinds of things people would want to do with it, before we launch it, we want to talk about how to like reorganize it so it's easy for people to implement whatever on top of it.
Well, one of the things that's interesting to me is I think there's a danger at small sizes. I think this index, like downloading the entire thing, is okay. But if you are ambitious about what this registry eventually does, the number of things that are in the registry and the amount of content for each one, imagine if assets somehow manage to make it into the list as well of all of this metadata, it's actually going to get pretty large, and there will be like efficiency problems with even searching through it. And I think it's the prior art of basically every other searchable module system not actually doing client-side searching, right? Like you don't see crates doing it, you don't see NPM doing it. Indicates that
it's a Brew be the other example.
Brew be the only one, right? Which is significantly smaller. I mean, like the number of Brew formulas, we might actually be hitting that number very shortly in the registry alone, in our registry. And it's like a completely different order of magnitude than something like NPM, right?
Yeah, I think to Ben's point too, like, and Travis was mentioning this, like, stuff that we could cache out of some of those things that wouldn't be in the index that we would store on the service is probably kind of the big advantage that you're also pulling from, right? Like you can imagine when someone publishes and we do some of that stuff, when we index it in this thing, like we can fetch like that label data that isn't going to be in the index, right? Or the offline asset cache, right? Like, and that now is a searchable entity.
I'm a little bit worried about the search reaching out to all these registries, right? Because you might run into problems like Docker Hub, rate limiting stuff. Like,
well, I imagine you would cache it and not do it on every search, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like when something's added, you update your own internal index. And Terrence, I think like there is an opportunity to instead say, actually, what we're going to do is we're going to write all of that metadata. Like you give us the sort of small bit today that's like namespace version and address, and we will go build all that. And the line that we actually put into the index is is all of the additional information. But I think about it like, remember that the core of the index, what it is supposed to do is to act as a pointer. And if all of a sudden the index, becomes 8 megs of JSON that the client, the pack, has to download and keep up to date, and then hydrate into memory and then traverse to get to the thing that you're actually looking at, like there are actual significant performance problems both downloading and actually using it if we start cramming all of that metadata in, versus what it is today is basically as efficient as it can be. Given an ID and a version, here is the pointer, right?
Yeah, I think I had some extensive work working on Bundler for Ruby Gems, and there was a huge part where as the thing got bigger, like you had a separate kind of store for stuff like description. Like we ripped that stuff out of the index. Like you don't need it. You don't need it to basically do like dependency resolution and other stuff, right? Like you kind of just want to have an index that is as small as possible. So I can even
since it's got to be
imagine us-
downloaded by everybody, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Every single pack user has to download this thing. And if you're on a slow connection, the first time you run pack, it takes a minute or two to go download the index. That's
yeah, I buy that. I feel like the model I was searching for is more of the Brew model, but I feel like to do the Brew model successfully, we would have had to make sort of different decisions. It'd be more like Brew, in that there aren't many things in the canonical index, or like maybe there isn't one. It's like taps. You point at a bunch of places that are hosting and decide what to do. And then you can sort of do the stuff on the client side. But if we're going with the centralized version, you guys are probably right that it doesn't make sense to do some hybrid of these two models. It's probably better to double down on them.
Would you prefer the decentralized model generally? Is that what you're proposing?
I'm not advocating that we change direction and go that way. I'm just sort of.
We do kind of have a distributed model, right? Like there is a theoretical case where PAC will allow you to look at any index, not just the index.
Right. And I think I really want to, I guess, get behind Emily's position or concern that I don't know how this would work. You know, once you provide a registry that is not the official registry, right? How would you then search via PAC, right?
Doesn't have to.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have to.
You wouldn't have to, but what if you wanted to, right? Like that's
You
where
should put, yeah, you
Build
should
your
put
own.
a search on your registry, and specifically, we'll have a really good search that understands the generic registry format, and it'll be open source, and we'll give you instructions on how to run it.
right. And I guess that's where I was going, right? Is that it sounds like at that point, just like we did for the Buildpack registry as an extension spec, I feel like this API would then also be an extension spec in order for us on PAC to be able to use the same interface. And then
That-
figure
yeah.
out a way to tie them
Yeah.
together.
That was a comment I made on the RFC is like,
Thing.
what is the contribution to the kind of spec and stuff? What does that look like?
Yeah, I actually like that idea, so that for PAC to do a search inside of PAC, it can depend on exactly what the spec API is. Sure.
Yeah, and then somehow we'd have to figure out a tie, right? Like this is
Yeah.
my registry, this is where it lives, but this is where you go to search for things within it.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, Javier, you're saying like the spec would be used to provide that interface to build a search across different indexes, registry indexes, whether it's the CNB one or a private one through PAC.
So, I mean, I think the use case very simply is we have the official registry index already, right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
then I want to now switch over to El Bandito's, you know, old
Mhm.
registry index, right?
Yeah.
But now I want to search that registry because that's the one that I've set as my default. How do I
Sure.
do that, right? And
Yeah.
it sounds like we want to essentially keep the same interface, right? And
Yeah.
so El
Mhm.
Bandito has to have that interface for searching hosted somewhere, right? At least as an optional feature.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we need to figure out a way to tie those together.
Yeah, a contribution that an
Mhm.
index can expose that information, like a dot search root URL,
Something like
like
that.
file in the root of the file of the index or something like that.
Mhm. Yeah.
Probably better to do like a dot CNV with a bunch of files inside of it, so we can expand a bit.
I guess if we're comfortable going that direction, do we want to? I know this is something we had talked about for the future, but basically make the registry a REST API as well, rather than having this Git REST API hybrid model with two different specs.
I think the big benefit actually having the two different models is that the REST API. Well, I guess like, do you mean like a REST API statically, or like actually a service,
I mean, like actually,
like
Right.
a full-on service? I think the
at
downside.
least for getting the index or something like that.
Yeah, I think the benefit of the kind of index, the way it's designed now, is it's way more scalable. So one of the comments I made was actually removing one of the endpoints, and I was talking to Travis about this earlier.
Mhm.
So if you notice in NPM, they actually used to have an all endpoint, but they removed it. I think part of it is just like that's just a huge hit on any server as you grow. Is like you cannot feasibly return all the packages in a JSON format that is super scalable. And so I don't know if we actually want that endpoint.
Mhm.
And if you kind of want that data, like that's why the index exists. It's a kind of efficient format to kind of fetch that information. And
Go
maybe
index
that's
it
what,
yourself.
yeah, and then people should be using that instead. Just because it could be really expensive on the database or whatever is powering underneath to kind of return all that data back.
You run into that problem with the query too then. It's like, what if I query for
Yeah, so
Buildpack?
I think npm solves this problem by basically having a max on like the size and stuff it will return back. So like they hard code, you can never have more than 250 npm packages that will ever return. You can't override that, but you can adjust from 1 to 250. And so I think you can basically scope. I mean, definitely when you're at npm scale, like you definitely want to scope like kind of how much you're returning.
Yeah, and then the other benefit of keeping them separate is, at least for right now, the authentication piece, right? You don't have to worry about that if all you care about is the data piece, and then versus the hosting of the search service or
Yeah, like the idea that search is optional makes things a lot more flexible, because it means most people internally, like realistically, they're just going to host a Git repo inside their own company, because the only people who are ever going to access it are going to be an ops team, and they don't need a search.
This is great stuff.
We keep sort of bumping along into, and like this is the third or fourth time we're like, maybe we need a real service here. But we're going to fight tooth and nail, it feels like, to make sure that doesn't happen. And then at the end, we'll be like, why were we so dumb? We should have just done this.
Yeah, that's when Terrence is going to rub it in, I'm sure. I think even if we go that route, we want some kind of hybrid, like it can still fall back to GitHub, so that even, you know, if there's some kind of service that's on the critical path and it goes down, people can still pull, people can still build and get their build pack from somewhere. They just can't do other things.
I guess my concern isn't like a super practical one. It's that, well, I've thought a lot about what makes a great build pack. I haven't thought a lot about what makes a great package registry. But there are lots of models, right? So I'm like, oh, are we doing brew? Or are we doing npm? You know?
Yeah, the brew.
Do we want to do a hybrid in between? And if we do, we should be careful about thinking about why.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely tried to learn from brew, but like the big difference with brew, when we thought about it, like back when, was that you don't use brew really to like, or at least I don't, and I don't think most people do, to like as like your entry point to like, I need a tool that will generate a GPG key or whatever. Like, no, you go to GPG and you look at the install instructions, right? It's probably a terrible example. I'm trying to think of a good one that I've done recently. Like, some of these Kubernetes tools like K9s or Customize or whatever. Like, I'm not finding those through Brew. I'm finding those through their website and their own marketing. Yeah. But with Buildpacks, it's different, and it's, you're not going to go to Joe's Minecraft website to find the Minecraft build pack. You're going to find it in a centralized registry.
Google has really great search functionality.
I was gonna say, why do we need this? We can just use the GitHub search, right? The heck?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so the drawbacks that I've mentioned, we kind of discussed already, actually, with just performance and decoupling some of the existing data inside of the current GitHub repo with what might be presented or how we might augment it. It's like, do we want to change it in one place, or keep the repo clean and simple and augment it somewhere else and persist it somewhere else? So yeah. Right now, it's all programmatically being massaged, the data normalized and all that. I'm sure at some point it might make sense to lean more heavily on a sophisticated database service to do a lot of this for us. Like Postgres, I know they have some built-in natural
full text search is what you're
full text search. Yeah, the full text search capabilities, which is probably going to be faster, more optimized than what I'm currently doing, even with a third-party library. So just things like that.
Yeah, I think that goes into the implementation details, right? Like if we're talking specifically about the interface, I think we're talking about what the inputs and outputs are. And then I think the part where we talked about how does this tie into the actual registry data.
Yeah. And of course, as mentioned, this is a service. This is the new ground for us as far as maintaining a service and what that looks like. So just things to consider. And of course, we are depending on GitHub. At Heroku, we've had instances where there have been outages on the GitHub side, which have degraded some of our services. Doesn't happen often, but it's just, you know, something that can happen, worth mentioning. Getting down to the alternatives, there's two that just kind of stuck out to me more. One was just, you know, we do nothing. We already have this information more or less inside of the GitHub repo that I showed earlier. A user could navigate that repository and find this information on their own, or maybe even using GitHub search to some extent. Maybe we can even wait, and a customer or a potential contributor might come up with a solution and contribute it to the CMD. So one of the other things I mentioned, and this might be more of an implementation detail, is actually kind of separating out a separate service that's responsible for, because right now it's all part of the actual API itself. Well, maybe I break out this background process into a separate service, like a worker process, that will be solely responsible for interfacing with the GitHub repo, taking the metadata from there, massaging it, going out to these various, you know, GCR, ECR, repository, you know, service vendors out there to augment the metadata into something that we actually want to display to the user, and have that be separate in its own service running with its own responsibility, and persisting that into a database. Again, this is probably more implementation detail. My goal, as I mentioned again at the beginning, is I really am trying to figure out an MVP approach to this, something really simple, because we are figuring out and trying to figure out how a customer might want to use this stuff. What, you know, there might be things we don't know yet, and I don't want to commit to such a huge solution as we are going through this experimentation phase and discovering things as we go. So my attempt is just to keep it really simple. And right now, what we currently have, I think, is a good starting point with the existing repo, and then just building on top of that for the time being, and then seeing how things look down the road and making changes accordingly. One of the impacts of not doing this, regardless, if we don't have an easy solution, I feel like for customers who are just kicking the tires on cloud native Buildpacks, wanting to just simply see what is there, what's in the community, how can I use it, it'll be really hard, I believe, for the adoption and discovery of all these third-party Buildpack vendors out there, and just exactly what the community can offer in the form of Buildpacks. It'll be really beneficial, I think, for customers to have that ability to quickly and easily find information that they're interested in, which is, you know, building their applications using Buildpacks. Prior art, there's a lot of examples out there. I didn't have Brew here, but it has been mentioned through the discussion, so that's one that we could also add. But yeah, you've got Ruby Gems, NPM, Rust has crates.io, and then there's Docker Hub. So there's a lot of prior art and things that we could draw on for inspiration. And let's see, some of the unresolved questions. Yeah, so right now I have a demo with code on 2 repos, one for a dashboard, but specifically for this API, I have a rough implementation already, which is providing the search capability via the query parameter. Down the road, I think it would be nice to have other clients. Pack, I totally agree that Pack would be something that we should also implement search capability on, and then also having a web-based client. kind of like as the first introduction, like Ruby Gems, NPM, those kinds of places, something similar to that. That's really all I have for now. I know there's other comments on the RFC. I'll get to those here shortly, but if you have any other questions, yeah, please let me know.
One of the other things that I just thought about was to make this a little bit more accessible, instead of having to re-implement the spec, right? I'm wondering if producing the service, right, the API REST service as an image, like being an output, that then similar to like a registry 2 for Docker, right? Like where you could now essentially set it up and just point it to the registry that you want it to look at, I think would be like a 5-minute setup for anybody and would make it a lot more accessible as well.
Superb. Imagine if there was a build system that would take some sort of source code as an artifact and turn out a runnable OCI image at the end of it. Wonder where we'd get such a thing to build that product.
I don't know. Someone should build it.
I was expecting Travis to SSH into the server and just start it up.
I mean, I assume that's what Heroku does under the hood, right?
Yep. Yeah, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks, Travis. Yeah, I guess he's going to address the feedback, but take a look if you haven't already. We have 5 minutes left, but I wanted to bring up Stack Packs. I was looking over it, and I don't see any outstanding questions, comments, concerns that haven't been replied to or something like that. So it's waiting on votes from Stephen and Emily. So,
we make it through the final run through.
Yeah, I think we did.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty sure we did. So yeah, please either, I mean, vote on it. Just vote it down. Just if you don't want it, just vote it down at this point.
I'm not gonna approve it. I'm just trying to figure out whether I needed to read it through one more time, but I think
You probably do.
yeah, probably.
That was like
But also,
pre-holiday,
like, we can
Emily.
just fix it later. I almost don't want to read it through again. I just want to approve it, and then we can make another RFC if we find something wrong.
Yeah, actually, I started drafting up the spec PR, and in part for the same reason. I wanted to kind of validate what did I miss or whatever. But it was actually kind of the opposite. Like as I was doing the spec PR, it's like, oh, I just got to cut all this stuff out that's in the RFC because it's like examples and like implementation details, and writing the spec PR actually felt a lot easier in that sense. Cool. All right, well, that's it for the agenda, I believe. Anybody have anything else? Cool. All right, well, we'll see some of y'all tomorrow. I think Sam said he's gonna block 30 minutes for the research stuff. So looking forward to that. Bye.